Hi, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This seat taken.
Hey, Kiernan.
Hello, Ryan. How you doing?
Good. There's an incredible storm happening right now over the Andes Mountains, and it's quite lovely.
And what kind of storm are we talking about?
Thunder, lightning, the whole 9 yards.
God, I hope you're not sticking your mic out the window.
No, but I've got a good view of the window. So it's like, it's people are running underneath trying to get out of the rain. And it hasn't rained that much in Bogota, when I was in the city we're about to talk about.
So you're in Bogota right now.
This is the last
episode. It's getting hard
episode.
to keep track, Ryan.
This is the last episode I'm recording from out of the country for a while. I'll be heading back. Next time you hear from me, I'll be in Bushwick. You'll hear the car horns, the car alarms, and the
rats
screaming.
The rats skittering across the microphone and keyboard.
Exactly. Yeah. So a lot of rats in Bushwick.
Do you have any? I always say to fight the travel depression, you should have your next trip planning already going on. Do you know where you're going next?
I'm gonna do a little Montreal weekend in May.
Oh, that's fun. We could do a Montreal follow-up, or maybe a deep dive into a single Montreal place. We've
done so much Montreal. It's like the other Mexico City.
Yeah, you like Montreal. You go north, you go south.
I got my Joe Beef reservations. I'm like in. It's going to be great.
So you're in Bogota now, but today's episode is not about Bogota.
No, today we've done a Bogota episode, and it's quite good. It's not that long ago, but no, today we're going to talk about Quito, Ecuador.
I have not been to Quito, so I can't wait. This is a Ryan-centric episode. I'm just going to lay back, let it wash over me.
I mean, the folks really love these episodes, so I'll
do the folks?
Do the folks do?
Hey, I noticed on Apple we got our ratings climbing up there. It's getting back to the 4.8 territory.
Yeah, folks should go and leave us a nice little 5-star review.
And we haven't had enough written comments lately. I'd like some written comments. I feel like since we offered the olive branch out to conservatives, we've cut back on the liberal talk. You conservatives who want to listen to us, go reward us. Say these woke dunderheads have finally listened to sense, and we just want travel, no politics. Good going, boys.
No, but a little politics, mostly no politics.
It wouldn't be bad to reward us, give us a treat. That's how you encourage good behavior.
Give us those 5 stars and tell us where to go. Be like, hey, do an episode on Australia.
That would be fun. That would be really great to get some episode suggestions.
Kiernan will send me wherever you say. That's so.
Well, listen, I was carrying the podcast for so long, Ryan, from Morocco to Bhutan, that it's good to see you kind of pulling your weight finally.
It's good to be back out on the road. It's been exciting. Speaking of the way that I've been traveling, doing this digital.
I thought you were going to say, speaking of the weight I've been carrying.
No, I'm looking good.
You do look good.
Thank you. Got a message on the old Instagram from Michael Brophy, friend of the pod, who said, hey, it would be interesting if you did an episode on digital nomading and sort of how I've been traveling and some of my tricks of the trade. And, I think he talks about having kids and everything, which is obviously a different situation than I'm in.
Speaking of Ryan, did you know your mom just unloaded a bunch of your children's books growing up? I guess she's given up hope. she's just adopting mine.
Yeah, well, that's the big Bill Pete house we were growing up.
Indeed, Thank you very much, Judy. Charlie's already a big fan of the Wumps.
Oh, I love the Wumps.
Which he keeps accidentally calling the Smuts, which is actually very related to what you currently read.
So, Michael, we will think about doing an episode on that. I would love to do it, but I'd love to have somebody on who can also speak from the perspective of like a non-single guy and the differences, because, I think that would be interesting. So, Kiernan, you've been threatening to do like a traveling with kids episode for a while. I think this all could come together nicely.
Yes, and now I feel like I have the experience where I can actually justify what it's like to be on a plane with 2 children.
Oof. Whenever I see kids on a plane, I'm just like, can I move to a different seat?
I'm amazed that I survived it.
So, Kieran, before we jump into Quito, because there's quite a lot to go through, we've got a message from our good friends over at Vanishing Postcards.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Well, Ryan, from time to time, you and I like to come on the podcast, just like in the last stop, where we like to share something that inspires the spirit of wanderlust within us. This is like a kind of an up top last stop, rare for us to dive in here. And what it is it's a podcast that I've been digging into. It's called Vanishing Postcards. Have you listened to that?
I have. I've listened to a few episodes. It's pretty cool.
It's a very good. I feel like if you're into Out of Office, you're going to like Vanishing Postcards because ours is very personality driven. It's you and me. You gotta like us to a certain degree. And
that's why there's a real top to how many fans we can have.
Absolutely. There's our moms, and then Catherine listens sometimes. I think maybe one of our old colleagues or two, and we're pretty much where we top out. And a bunch of conservatives who hate us. But if you're looking for something that's more like a documentary travel log, Vanishing Postcards is definitely where you want to go, because what it is they basically they kind of construct it so that you're like riding shotgun on road trips to uncover all the kind of hidden stories and little histories that you can get from all over the place. And in fact, in the last season, our friend Evan Stern joined forces with an organization I love called the Southern Foodways Alliance. They've got a great podcast, too, which I'll just throw in here, called Gravy. And I love their opening is one of the funniest podcast openings. Just a bunch of people saying the word gravy. I love it. Anyway,
that's pretty funny.
Evan got Southern Foodways Alliance to gather up these stories of a bunch of kitchens in his home state of Texas. And so you go from the streets of Laredo to churches, to ranch cookouts, to the shores of the Gulf Coast. I mean, Texas, I feel like you could do a travel show just on Texas alone. It's so big.
Yeah, Texas is huge.
I think we need a few more Texas episodes. We should put that in the old hopper. I don't know if I've ever done a full deep dive on LBJ's Texas, but that's a good idea for a future episode for us.
That's a great idea.
And so if you're interested in knowing maybe what LBJ might have eaten down in Texas, and what also whether communities across Texas are eating, Vanishing Postcards is the place you're going to want to go. Ride alongside our bud Evan Stern and go get it anywhere that you enjoy listening to podcasts, including this very podcast, Out of Office. So, and by the way, if you do, shoot him a comment, tell him Out of Office sent you.
Yeah, tell him Ryan and Kieran sent you. But Kieran, I think it's time to take off.
Hold on, I'm just finishing this episode of Vanishing Postcards. Okay. All right. Okay. I'm full attention trained on you, Ryan. I think it's time to tell the cabin crew.
Flight attendants.
Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff, please.
So, Kieran, we talked about this a little bit last week, but Quito is the second highest world capital after La Paz. It's 9,350 feet in the air, so it's pretty high. And it's a pretty big city. It's got a metro population of 2.8 million people, so it's bustling. It's a city of different kinds of neighborhoods. There are the fancy residentials. There's the more packed residentials. There's a historical center. There's a lot going on. I stayed in a neighborhood, sort of like a businessy neighborhood near La Carolina, which is a lovely park in the city. I was there for about 10 days. Now, I will say, I was working during the week, and I would kind of go out a bit at night. But this is a city that a lot of folks come in and out of when they're going to the Galapagos, which I have not. Have you ever done the Galapagos?
No. In fact, we had a friend whose parents were turning 70, and they wanted for one of their 70th birthday to rent a ship where all of us would go out to the Galapagos together. Very exciting. And then the pandemic got in the way of all of that. So I aspire to get back there because I was already starting to dream about it.
Yeah, no, I would love to get there. Even when I was in Quito, I met quite a few groups of people who were traveling, to and from the Galapagos. So that really is, one of the bigger draws of the city. But it's a fantastic city in its own right. Now, one thing I will tell you is, luckily I was there for 10 days because I picked the most rainy time of the year to go. It is literally the month that is like known for the rain. Yeah. So March and April, the wettest months, of course, that's when I was there. So I would recommend that folks try to make it between November and February, because a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about today involves like walking around, being outside, and it's not just the rain. It's like the constant like dreariness. I
got a day like that in Boston right now.
Yeah, I got a day like that too in Bogota, but
Ryan, it makes me feel like you're right here.
Poor us, right? So I never look up the weather and stuff when I'm making travel plans, and maybe I should. So that is something to be aware of. You might not want to go in the height of the rainy season because it's one of those places where it can kind of look like it's not going to rain, and then 1 second later, you can't believe how much water is falling from the sky.
Well, this is why, having proper rain gear when you're out on the road, very important. I always try to pack my raincoat. I made the mistake when I was in South Carolina just a couple weeks ago. I didn't have my raincoat with me, and we had this like one little window where we could hit Congaree National Park. And I had to like pull off into the middle of nowhere where there was, of course, a Walmart, and buy the family a round of ponchos.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, you got to be ready. You got to be ready. Luckily,
so what was your rain gear in Quito? Did you have a raincoat? Did you buy an umbrella?
Luckily, the woman who had the Airbnb, she had an umbrella there, so I made good use of it. Yeah, I made good use of that umbrella. And often it was during the day it was raining, so I just sort of watched while I was like working. I'm like, wow, looks pretty bad out there. But it is. So Quito is known for the historic center. It is considered to be one of the largest and least altered of the historic centers in the Americas. So a ton of that Spanish colonial architecture that folks love when they're traveling Latin America. It was one of the first to ever be declared a World Heritage Site. This is in 1978. And it's a really big downtown historic center area. Most of the things are settled around this one big plaza, Plaza de la Independencia, or Plaza Grande, which is much.
Yeah, you can stick with Plaza Grande. You almost have it. It's amazing to me how you've been in Spanish-speaking countries now for like 4 weeks.
It's almost 6. This is the big sort of main center square. You're going to go. You're going to see a lot of kids playing. You're going to see people playing music. You're going to see people dancing. Just a lot of like activity and things going on. There's a couple really cute little cafes that you can sit out and have a cup of coffee and sort of hang out and just sort of enjoy the vibe. There's a lot of really beautiful buildings on this square. You've got the palace, you've got the Metropolitan Cathedral, you've got a couple other palaces. I didn't actually go to any of these buildings. Some of them are open for tours. I mean, there's just a lot to do in Quito, so I was very specific about the things that I wanted to see and get done. But it is a really lovely place to spend, an afternoon walking around Plaza Grande and the plazas sort of around it. Checking out all those churches and small museums, et cetera. Just a lot going on in the center. Now, Quito is a real city of churches. And what's interesting is they've got churches that span hundreds of years. So you've got a lot of different styles of churches, not just sort of the old school kind of Spanish colonial. You've got Gothic, you've got Baroque. You've got like a lot of different styles of architecture. So if you're a church fan, Quito is going to be a town that you're really going to enjoy. And I know that you love churches, Kieran.
A church fan is, I actually have it tattooed on both biceps so that if you're on either side, you know.
So the church that I enjoyed the most is located just a short walk from Plaza Grande. I will say they don't take credit cards, so make sure you grab some cash. Ecuador uses something called the U.S. dollar, so folks should be familiar with that. And that's sort of how you get around. So a lot of these museums don't have credit card machines, so I'd encourage you to carry a little cash with you.
Is there any sensitivity to the quality of the cash?
Well, I only took out of ATMs in ATMs there, but I have heard they only take good. I've heard that before they only take good quality dollars. But
yeah, that's a real, if you're traveling and planning on using dollars, best to go with really crisp. You never know. Sometimes they do reject it, and there's some places where it's extreme that they want it absolutely crisp, fresh from the bank.
And you know what's weird is I live in the United States, as do you. How often do you see those golden dollar coins?
I have not seen them since I think I read they were introduced, and then all of a sudden every bank got a couple of them, but I haven't seen them since.
Right, and there was one with the famous woman,
Sacagawea?
Sacagawea.
You're talking about the Sacagawea dollar.
The Sacagawea dollar. So
sure.
I saw a lot of those, but I had no idea there was also a John Adams dollar.
Oh, and you got that in Quito?
Yeah, well, in Quito.
You got to save it.
Yeah, I think I already spent it. But it is funny that I've come all the way to Quito, Ecuador, to find out that the U.S. at some point issued a John Adams
That's
dollar
very nice.
coin.
I'm glad Adams got on some currency.
Yeah, good for him.
It would be great to do a John Quincy as a follow-up.
I love.
Also, kind of fitting for John Adams. You put him on this coin nobody ever uses.
A coin that most Americans don't know exists unless they go to Ecuador. Yeah, that is one of the interesting things, though, is that you're walking around with dollar bills, and it's very kind of it's bizarre. I'm but it works for them. Apparently, it's led to a lot of national stability. So hey, I'm glad somebody's enjoying the dollar. So the neo-Gothic basilica that I'm talking about is the Basilica del Voto Nacional. And this is one of the largest neo-Gothic churches in all the Americas. It was completed in 1909. And, it's got that real Notre Dame vibes, when you're standing on the outside, these massive columns, these beautiful clock towers. It's a very cool church. And you can pay those Adams coins, and you can get a ticket that'll let you go all the way up to the top of the bell tower. And it's 16 flights of stairs. So you're even getting up higher when you're in Quito. But you're able to go all the way up, and it's a great view of the historic center. I think it might be the only time I've ever been inside of a clock tower and seen the clock from the other side.
Cool. Can you look out through the clock?
Yeah, you can see out through the clock. You get to go to the tip top in places they don't usually let you go in some of these churches.
Really cool.
And another cool part of it is on the way up, you get to kind of stop in the middle and walk behind the main stained glass. It's called the rose window.
Oh yeah, sure.
And see that from the other side as well, which is super cool. So I definitely recommend that. And there's some beautiful views of both the city and of the inside of the church and the rose glass. You can see why this is something that people really enjoy, and is one of the top sort of spots for tourists to check out in the city. The other church I went to is the Basilica and Convent of San Francisco. This is sort of an interesting church because it combines a bunch of different styles because it was under construction for something like 150 years. So they finished in the mid 1600s. But the facade and the inside of the church, the inside is incredible. All this amazing gold plate, it's like Donald Trump's fantasy of what a church would look like. Really, really gorgeous collection of Baroque art, and there's a lot going on. This is a very exciting interior of the church, and the idea that it was under construction for so long, and that because of that, it really does have kind of different vibes and different kind of looks depending on what section of the church you're in. It's a really interesting thing to visit.
And is it mostly like the gold ornamentation? Is it kind of a Baroque, like angels and just like tons of different figures?
Yeah, it's a lot of different figures and gold leaf and a lot of different styles of saints and everything. It's very beautiful.
I always think with that, like it'd be nice to be in a nice long ceremony in there, and you kind of entertain yourself by taking in all the details.
Yeah, no, it would definitely be a place you'd want to attend mass, because there's a lot of stuff to kind of pass the time to
usually
at.
I'm in such deep religious contemplation that I don't have time for that, Ryan. But since you said it was such a great place to go to mass, I assume you must have gone to mass, right?
No, I did not go to mass, but there was a mass going on while I was there.
Okay, so you were mass adjacent.
Yeah, and I told my mom the churches were packed. It's funny because I go to a lot of churches in Mexico, and nobody's in the church.
Kind of waning there.
Yeah, but here in Quito, it was just like there was like standing room only at this church. So Catholicism alive and well, at least in Ecuador.
Okay, well, that's not a great thing, but maybe all right.
And then the another church that's quite famous for its architecture that I didn't make it to, but as you say, reason to go back, is La Campana, and that's another church that folks really enjoy the architecture, and again, it comes from a slightly different time period. So that just scratches the surface of the churches that you can go see both in the historic center and around. But I think if you're a church lover, Quito is the place for you.
I'm a church lover. Read my biceps.
Instead of mom, it just says church. So when you're standing in anywhere around historic center and you look up, there's a massive statue of the Virgin of Quito on top of a hill.
Surely you must have found him and changed his title.
This is the Virgin Mary, I would assume.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You're less interested in that.
She overlooks the whole city. This is a statue that was built.
Who do you think the hottest saint is, Ryan?
Sebastian.
Sebastian with all the arrows?
Sebastian's the patron saint of gay men.
I didn't. We have a patron saint of gay men?
We have?
Oh, I should. we Catholics. That seems much more open to the gay lifestyle than we've generally proven ourselves.
I don't think it's official. He's officially for the gays, but gay men are obsessed with Saint Sebastian.
Is that because he has long shafts plunging into him?
There's something phallic about that, I'm sure. But gosh, I was when I was in Mexico City a couple trips ago. I went to an art gallery that was doing all Saint Sebastian art from different artists, and it was some of it was kind of homoerotic, I have to tell you.
It's funny because on a quick Googling, I'm seeing it's a combination of his strong shirtless physique. And the symbolism of the arrow. So I was really onto something. But strong shirtless physique. I mean, you got it. Jesus is portrayed as with that all the time.
Well, Jesus was probably a very handsome man.
And the nails, that's pretty phallic. He's got the spear in the side. What, Jesus not good enough for the gays?
So the gays like Sebastian. They really do. And you know what I should do is I always, my friend Adam and I are big fans of Saint Sebastian, and we send each other photos of Saint Sebastian stuff that we come across in our travels. So
wow, I had no idea. This is we're all learning together. Saint Sebastian, loved by the gays.
Loved by the gays.
So presumably a lot of Catholic priests.
Well, I wish I had known about him when I was younger. But Saint Sebastian, he's where it's at. But back to the Virgin of Quito, and that was not, unfortunately, Saint Sebastian. This statue, built in the 70s, huge statue of Mary with wings, which is unusual.
Yeah, you don't see that too often.
Yeah, you don't see that too often. So it's very cool. I went all the way up I took a taxi all the way up to the top. Now, it does have great views of the city, and it's cool to see the statue. But if you only have a couple days, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. I'm going to talk about another way, a better way to see a great view of the whole city. But if you really like statues of the Virgin Mary, this is one of the only ones where she has wings as an angel in the world.
Do they call that out as like a special, unique thing there?
Yeah, absolutely. They're very proud of it. And the locals actually claim it's the only major statue of Mary with wings.
Well, it's probably true because, famously, the Catholics believe that Mary did not die, that she just ascended into heaven, but you nothing about wings.
No, she's apparently, again, this has like been discussed. There is the Virgin of the Apocalypse in the Book of Revelation, and that is that she could be portrayed with wings because of that.
Oh, Revelation!
I know.
That's the sketchier part.
It is. That's not my favorite book in that.
I've always liked to think of the Ascension as being lifted up into a UFO. Just all of a sudden, just start floating up in a ray.
But in Quito, there is an aerial tramway where you can ascend into the heavens.
Ooh, that sounds funicular adjacent.
Yeah, well, I thought you would be proud of me, Kiernan, because I literally was like, gosh, if I don't do this aerial tramway, I'm going to hear about it for the rest of my life. But I know that it's not technically a funicular, but
because for those who don't know, for new listeners who are always picking up, I really want to do a funicular episode. I've been saying it since episode 1. We were going to do funiculars of the world. I have a couple funiculars in my back pocket. Ryan goes to great cities with funiculars, and he comes back and he goes, they had a funicular. And I said, great, did you ride it? And he goes, no. So we can't do an episode unless we've experienced it.
Well, I have experienced this tram. This is much more like a closed version of what you do when you're skiing, of like those ski trams.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, it's closed. And one thing I will say is this goes so you're already like when you're in Quito, you are a good 9,000 feet in the air just as like a baseline. Okay, so you're already in one of the tallest cities in the world. This takes you up for a total of 13,500 feet. So this is getting you pretty high above the city. And I have to say I didn't experience any breathlessness in Quito, I think because I had spent so much time in Mexico City before, so I had a pretty good baseline going in. But when I got up to the top of this mountain, the Cruz Loma Hill it's called, which is it's a volcano actually that you're going up to the top of. When I got to the top of this, I could really feel that I had gained elevation relatively quickly.
We should have had you record a little something up there. Light a cig. Ryan is.
And another thing I regretted the second I got up there was I only had a sweater on. I didn't bring like a jacket, and boy, did it get chilly up there.
You're in the freaking mountains.
I know. I was not adequately dressed, Mom. I'm sorry. But you get up there and it is pretty cool. I mean, the views of the city are unbelievable. You're really, really high up. There are a couple little trails that you can go on. I walked a bit, but like I said, it was quite cold, so I didn't really explore. There's one called the Trail of the Llamas, which I was disappointed I didn't see any llamas. I definitely looked.
Hey, you could have killed one and taken its fur. To stay alive up there.
I'd rather wear alpaca, but a llama do in a pinch. And that there's a little cathedral that's quite lovely as well.
There's a cathedral
on top of the volcano.
Oh,
absolutely.
Gosh, this place is getting better and better.
Yeah, so it's cool. And I would definitely if you're into going up mountains on aerial devices, this is for you. It really is. It's quite the view.
You seem to really like views.
Well, Quito's a city of views, I mean, it's a big, it's surrounded by mountains, and I do like a good view. You don't like a view?
It's funny. So like when I go to a particularly tall building or like a church where you have to pay extra to go all the way up, Generally, a view is not enough to get me there. I really like nature views. I love like going up to a viewpoint at the end of a hike.
This has that too, right? So you've got the views of other volcanoes in the area. So if you look out one side of the mountain, you see Quito. If you look out the other side, you see forest and more mountains. So you get the best of both worlds if you go up this tram.
City of views. I like to think we're a podcast of views. But not political views. Not political views.
No political. No, we've been remarkably apolitical in this episode.
There was somebody who wrote, like, sad to see the woke hatred.
He gave us 4 stars, though.
Yeah, that's true. Not that sad. I guess. Can you believe our content's so good we overcame that?
We're bringing America together.
I think you're the one who said it's the first time we've ever been called woke.
That's true.
The generation below us thinks we're Mitt Romney,
and they really do. They really. All my Gen Z employees would never call me woke.
I mean, you could do worse than Mitt Romney.
Yeah, you could. So that is the mountain. And you're going to kind of come back down to Earth, come back down to Quito. I want to talk about a couple museums. And
you coming back down to Earth, you could close your eyes, pretend that you have angel wings. I was like the Virgin. I was not looking forward to the way down because I thought that it would be too fast, but it was okay. But it was very high, and I don't have a fear of heights, though. I don't like heights. I wouldn't say that I like heights, but you like views. That's a dangerous combo. Well, yeah. Well, I'm not. I mean, remember I told you about how much I hated having to rappel down into that cave. It was like a nightmare. Oh, I've seen the picture. I'm like, the least happy I've ever been. That was not good. That was not good. You're still. Oh, it makes me cringe. That secondhand embarrassment. It was so awful. I'll never forget the little children applauding for me. So I've been on a bit of a Simon Bolivar kick. I've noticed this. Yeah, I've been enjoying this excellent biography that I am getting through right now. And for those who don't know who Simon Bolivar is, the great liberator. Yeah, they just call him the Liberator, which I think is kind of a funny, kind of a cool nickname. So knowing that you've been like diving into who he is, for those that are not Bolivar heads. Bolivar Cabezas. Yeah, he's like the South American George Washington. He's a kid who grew up with immense privilege and was incredibly worldly. Traveled the United States, traveled Europe, and really got it in his head that he was going to help liberate his home country, Venezuela, from the Spanish, and then over the course of like 20 years, proceeded to help liberate a lot of countries, Ecuador being one of them, Colombia being one of them. So this is he's a really accomplished, fascinating guy, and I would love to do a whole episode on Bolivar. I was just South about America. To say that's a great idea. I had no idea that he had traveled in the U.S. Yeah, he came to Pennsylvania. He was fascinated by the U.S. He was a huge fan of our founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson. He quoted the Declaration at length. He was an interesting guy. Not a fan of John Quincy Adams because of some political disagreements. But, interesting. Yeah, but there's some crossover. So he wouldn't like this these Adam coins flowing around Quito. But yeah, when I think he would like, wait a minute. I did a little more for Ecuador than John Adams, who wouldn't even. I mean, gosh, the things John Adams wrote about the Spanish Revolution and the idea of there being a free Latin America. Not his most woke moments. John Adams or John Quincy? John Adams. Oh, John Adams was not a fan of the idea that Latin America should be free of Spanish rule. Well, John Adams didn't know. No. He was a Massachusetts farmer. Yeah. But one of the things that Bolivar was, besides being the liberator, he was a bit of a womanizer. And he met this incredible woman who I had never heard of, but now I am quite familiar with, Manuela Saniz, and she's from Quito, and she was a married to an older man, and just a little bit bored, and she meets the liberator at a party, and says, you know what, like I'm going to be this guy's lover, and I'm going to fight with him
side by side in the battle for independence.
Oh, okay. I thought I'm going to fight with him.
No,
I'm going to make this guy miserable.
He was miserable enough. He didn't need.
Is he a miserable guy?
He's. I mean, he's back and forth. I mean, he had a tough life.
That makes me like him more.
They called him Old Iron Ass because he could ride his horse for so long. I love that.
Yeah, I think you dated an old iron ass once, didn't you?
All right, not an old,
a young iron ass.
Oh, cutting that.
No, keep it in.
So she is very famous, and what's happened is there wasn't like anything to remember her specifically in Quito. So not too long ago, this house from the 1750s, a colonial house that is not really affiliated with her family, but represents the time that she lived, was purchased and turned into a museum dedicated to her memory. So you've got a lot of stuff that she owns, stuff that Simon Bolivar owned. You've got some of their love letters they wrote to each other. They're very, very prolific writers back in the day. A lot of fantastic artwork, paintings about her and Simone and their life together, including some really kick-ass sketchings of them on their battle horses, like in full fight mode.
Oh man!
So they are a very cool. They were a very cool couple, and she was pretty badass, and she
had a badass and iron ass.
Yeah. She saved his life in 1828, and so he began to call her the liberator of the liberator.
Oh, Libertadora del Libertador.
See.
Oh, I'm getting steamy just having said that.
So her role in the revolution has been more and more studied as of late, and she's become quite a symbol of feminist power. And has gotten a lot more recognition in recent years. In fact, I was just at Simon Bolivar's house here in Bogota, where he lived after the conquest briefly, and there was a whole room where she also lived. So it's cool to see that. It was cool to make that connection between the two of them. So this is a small museum. The guide I was the only one in the museum. It's not super popular, but it is very cool. And
you put in a good sell for it. I'm very intrigued.
Yeah, the guide was really fantastic, and I think he enjoyed nerding out with me because I had a lot of really specific questions about her and her involvement and her relationship with Bolivar. And
did you ask if there were any ghosts?
I did not. I didn't.
That's deep cut. Deep cut for the big out of office heads.
I waited until the very end and it was completely quiet. And I was like, "You ever seen a ghost?" He would have been very disappointed had I asked that.
I assume this was they offered the tour in English for you.
You can tell that it wasn't something they generally did, but he switched over to English when he realized I didn't have any idea what he was saying at one point. So I very much appreciated that. You do read in the TripAdvisor that the tour is not in English. So there is that to deal with. But even if you don't understand everything that's happening, the paintings are self-explanatory. The weapons and the clothes and stuff. I mean, you can. I would read her Wikipedia. I kind of did a little research on her before I went, so I wouldn't be completely lost. But there's quite a lot of sort of revolutionary history around Quito. There was a general's house that I wish I had gone to because I just got to the point in the book where he's become a big character, Sucre, S-U-C-R-E. So yeah, it's if you're interested in this moment in Latin American history, Quito's got quite a bit to offer you there. And I want to switch to something. So I'm going to switch to something a little bit different. This was the very first thing I did and really set a good tone for my trip to Quito. There's an artist, Oswaldo Guayasamín, and he passed away in the early aughts. Was born in 1919 and is a really incredible guy. Had a career spanning over 60 years. really painted. He was a painter. He was a sculptor. He was a filmmaker. I mean, he was everything. This guy was incredible. And in the late 90s, he decides that he's going to open his house up as for tours, and he's going to build a museum dedicated to his work, because he realized that over the course of his life, he'd sold a lot of paintings, and almost everything was gone from Ecuador. He had sold to other Latin American collectors, to the States. You know, he had a heck of a career. He was beloved by the Rockefellers, big collectors. If you actually go to the Rockefeller Mansion, upstate New York, you can see some of his work there. So he spent the last years of his life buying back as many things as he could to bring it back into Ecuador so he could open this museum. So this is a place that has two separate museums. One is his house, which includes a lot of his collections of pre-Columbian art and other things that he collected throughout his life. He had a excellent taste and has a lot of really cool things there. Also includes some of his work. And then next door, he built this massive chapel of man. You know, he was a pacifist. He was obsessed with painting about the horrors that he's seen during the course of his life. And, you know, as somebody who was a member of historic Ecuador, he saw, you know, indigenous uprisings. He saw the government respond violently to a lot of things in Ecuador, and you know, back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So he paints a lot about government overreach and violence and things like that. And the actual Chapel of Man itself is incredible designed. Kind of, it feels almost like an indigenous something you would find like in Peru, made by the Incas. So the Incas never controlled Quito. They're proud of that. The Incas never made it really into Ecuador.
The Incans aren't proud of it.
No, the
Incas aren't proud of it.
No, they were not that proud of it. They tried, believe me. But both of these things taken together, you've got the classic house, you've got the very modern Chapel of Man Museum. Really fantastic. I had a lovely time. I didn't know much about him, and by the time I left, I was a full-on fan, and just think he is quite a character and quite a powerhouse in Latin American art.
Can we get some shots up on the old Instagram of this guy?
Most definitely. I'm gonna throw some shots up of his work, because it was really, really impressive, and it was a great way to kick off my trip. And
at OOO podcast, for those who aren't already following.
Oh yeah, we've got some good stuff there. So I'm going to talk really briefly about an excursion I took. If you have an extra day, this is like an hour outside of the city, you can actually visit the equator. Ecuador has the equator in it. You can get how that works. They built a big monument in the late 1970s, dedicated to where the equator is. But they got it wrong, and they put it in the wrong place.
Oh, brutal.
It's brutal. Yeah, it is 200 meters off.
Why don't they move it?
They've moved it a number of times already. Okay, so this is where it's going to be. That's the last time you trust the French, not to get the. It's funny because there's a whole part of the museum.
Macron has given us more and more reasons every day to not trust the French.
There's this museum dedicated to the French expedition where they found where the equator was. The joke is it's wrong. They got it wrong. So you didn't know that they got it wrong. They did their best, but it's a Mitad del Mundo. Is the name of the park, and you know it's kind of cheesy family fun. There's a lot of music. There's some small little kind of like cheesy museums to check out, and then there's this big massive this big massive sculpture dedicated to where the equator is. And we now know not actually where the equator is. And nearby this is. This is something else that I'm talking about because I thought it was cool, but there's also like a really high cheese factor. There's this artist, Cristobal Ortega Malaya, and he is an indigenous artist, and he's built this thing called the Temple of the Sun, Temple del Sol. And the building itself is really cool. It's kind of like It looks like a Incan castle kind of. The grounds have some really interesting sculpture and work by him. The stuff inside, it's like not great. And while I think he is extremely talented, this is like really kind of salesy and touristy. Like multiple times in the tour they try to sell you like cocoa leaves and just things like that. It's very strange. But the building itself is really awesome. So if you're going to go to the equator, you're going to check out where the equator is or where the equator almost is. This would be something you could spend an hour and go check out because it is a very cool building. But if you only have time to do the Wyasamin house and his museum, that is a much more legit, serious experience, and I would recommend that. But I did think that the Temple of the Sun was cool, and it was interesting outside, but I have to tell you the art was a real letdown on the inside there. His son is always there, and he does this like show and tell thing that I called him like Ecuador's Bob Ross, because he was like showing us how he paints the mountain and how he adds and it was just the whole time like my friend was like, wow, and I'm like in my mind I'm like literally Ecuadorian Bob Ross is happening in front of me. No offense to Bob Ross, cool guy,
of course not.
Cool guy.
Only good things.
So in the remaining time, I want to jump into something that you and I enjoy, and that's food.
Fine dining.
Yes. I talked a little bit on the last episode about Somos. Somos is definitely the hottest restaurant in Quito. It was packed. The vibes were great. There's really cool murals on the wall. The kitchen is open. And so it's like, you're getting like a real show. This is where I ate the worm. And I was able to actually figure out the kind of worm
I asked you to come back with a little more information on this worm because you said it had a shell.
Yeah. So if you saw the picture I posted, these are harvested from palm trees, and the worm grows on the trunk in a white larva. So that's what that shell is.
I see.
Yeah. So that is what I ate. It's a chancacoro worm, and folks eat it without cooking it, and I would not do that. I don't think. I think I was happy that it was dead when I was eating it. The chef at Somos, Alejandra Espinoza, she is fantastic. It's her place, and the talk of the restaurant when I was there is that she had literally just gone to Miami that week because she's working on opening up a Miami branch of the restaurant. So in the near future, you'll be able to get this fantastic Ecuadorian meal in Miami, which is a cool place to eat anyway. So Somos, definitely recommend that. Another fine dining place that is sort of like they're doing a seasonal. They do 4 menus a year, very seasonal, all fresh ingredients from Ecuador. They never repeat. So if you go for spring one year and you go back to spring the next year, it's going to be a different menu. It's called Urco. And I really, I enjoyed myself. It's a very small place. It's very intimate. The 2 chefs who run it are also sort of a part of the service. They come by, they talk to you, they ask you how you're doing. It's a set menu. One of the things I really enjoyed at the end was the chocolate tasting. Ecuador is known for its chocolate as well as its coffee, and they had a lot of different kinds of chocolate, and it made for a really lovely finale to the meal. But I did want to give them a shout out because it was an especially classy, thoughtful experience. And then, I'm a sucker for like really old school restaurants, like super old school. And there was this restaurant I had read about, Rincón de Francia. And this place opened 43 years ago. And Kieran, I tell you, it didn't look like they had changed a single thing in 43 years. I mean, it is like white tablecloth, red walls, like paintings of men on horseback. I mean, it is like,
all right, it's fun.
It is really old school white tablecloth. The food was fantastic, and it was a good break from the Ecuadorian food that I was eating. Just it's basically like a steak frites kind of place. But I had a good time there. And it really did feel like I was sort of stepping back in time 43 years ago when these folks opened. And then I would be remiss not to give a shout out to the place I spent the most time. You find like a local coffee shop when you're like in a city, and I was there for a while. And so I had to get coffee every morning and every afternoon. And I got really into this place called Jurgen Cafe, Jurgen, started by this guy named Jurgen, who is a 4th generation baker in Quito. And the coffee was fantastic, but the bread was so amazing, and he had so many different kinds of bread. And I would go there in the morning. I'm like trying not to eat carbs in the morning, so I'd be like, I'll be back at 2:00, And so I'd rush.
The carbs are less powerful after 2.
I'd rush over at 2:00 and I'd get my pan de yuca, which is the Ecuadorian cassava bread, which is
you love it.
Oh my gosh,
love it so much.
Cheesy bread is everything, and so
it's also probably even more impressive because baking at altitude is very challenging.
Well, I mean, that's why this guy's got 4 generations.
It sounds like Jurgen's figured it out.
Yeah, he's figured it out. Yeah, so that it was a lovely place to go, get a coffee, get a piece of bread. I had brunch there one Saturday, and it was terrific. So
did they start to get to know you?
Oh, they definitely knew me. I would walk in and they knew exactly what my coffee order was.
They were like, get the cheese bread out.
They'd always point to it in the morning. I'd be like, no, not right now.
2 p.m., 2 p.m.
And it's just like you can smell, you walk in and it's like they're just baking constantly because it's just like
it's a dream.
It's an awesome place. And that's right near, like I said, my neighborhood, which is near La Carolina Park, which is, so grab a coffee, get a piece of bread, and walk around the park. It's a lovely, there's a lake, there's lots of sports happening, there's a botanical garden that I really wanted to go to because they had a bonsai tree collection, but I just couldn't make the timing work. So yeah, that's something I would recommend. So Kieran, that is my Quito 101.
It's fantastic. Very compelling, and I feel like I learned a lot about a place I hadn't been. I had not considered putting a trip down there, but now I feel like now that I've knocked out Peru, you've convinced me to look to Bolivia, to Ecuador, to sort of continue the history lesson that Peru was.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of history just south of us, so folks should explore.
Only John Adams had appreciated it.
And now he's forever there, and every coin ever minted with his face. Okay, do you know what time I think it is?
I think it's time for the last stop.
The last stop.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the last stop on this train. Everyone, please leave the train.
Now, Ryan, we are here in the last stop. It's the last segment of the show, the final segment of the show. It's why we call it the last stop. And it's my favorite segment. It's your favorite segment. It's popularly known as the People's Segment. In a way, we're sort of the liberators ourselves, right? We're doing it for the people. And here we are liberating anything we want to bring. We can bring a story. We can bring an artifact of some sort, a dream, a plan, a resource. But it has to just fit this one criterion. It must inspire the spirit of wanderlust within us, even during the workaday week. So, Ryan, I'm going to ask you, as I ask you every week, do you have a last stop this week?
I do, Kieran. I read this interesting study this week, which is about the average number of places that people regularly visit. And apparently this is similar for almost everyone, that you have 25 places that you visit over and over and over again. And they did this study using phone location data, tracking 40,000 people over several years. And they found that the vast majority of people have 25 spots where they spend the quote unquote vast majority of their time. Now, what makes this interesting is they did a happiness survey, and they found that the folks who were more likely to venture outside of those 25 areas, go to different neighborhoods, different restaurants, day trips, etc., reported a higher sense of well-being and happiness.
That explains why you're so happy.
Yeah, well, I think we talk about wanderlust, right? We talk about making an effort, to get out there and explore things, and even if you're going to some place that's 45 minutes away you've never been to, or you're trying out a new restaurant, or you're hitting up a different gallery. The people who break out of what they call the tyranny of their 25 are more likely to report feelings of happiness and well-being. And I know that I feel that way when I travel, and they think that the newness and the discomfort fire up your brain's learning centers and make you feel like you're experiencing something new, because you are. So that is that's my last stop.
It's a good. We should include that in the advertisements for Out of Office. I feel like if you can't get out there and travel, we can make it feel like you're visiting all these places.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, go there in your head. Did
that
you
could have
bring
been one of our rejected taglines? Go there in your head.
I think it was something close. Remember an oral
I'm still
experience?
advocating for Pack Your Bags, Buster Brown.
Oh, folks. What is your last stop this time, Kieran?
All right, Ryan. Well, I sometimes discuss that I have anytime I'm going anywhere in the United States, I always make sure that I go and check the national park listing for any sites that they have that might be vaguely around there, because I never want to find out that I went to a place and then, there's some sort of monument or special historic protected land right by that I could have visited. Okay. And, these places can be really, really out of the way, but they still are protected by the National Park Service. So I always go look at the comprehensive list. I browse the whole state. I do a lot of Google mapping to make sure. Good example is that when I was in North Carolina a couple weeks ago, I went to the National Park website, looked. There is a memorial to the Wright brothers that I really wanted to see. It turned out to be 4 hours away. So I didn't get to go there, but I was glad that I knew, and I felt that I had done my homework to be sure that I wasn't missing something I could reach. And I've got a new resource that I'm going to add to my repertoire here when I'm going anywhere. And it's the Wikipedia page called List of United States Post Office Murals. That is real good. I mean, this is where Wikipedia just shines. Where else are you going to get List of United States Post Office Murals? And many of these murals, first of all, they're all across the United States. And what brought me to this page originally was I was researching.
Wow. There's so many, Kieran. There are so many.
There are so many, and many of these are Depression era. There's an interesting little bit at the top where people mistakenly think all of these were financed by the Works Progress Administration, which of course was the federal program to put artists to work during the Depression, to create jobs and to beautify federal buildings. Turns out some of these were from a slightly different program called the Federal Arts Project, which was actually the largest of the New Deal arts projects, which was news to me. So they're advocating for these to just be called New Deal art, which incorporates Federal Arts Project and WPA finance projects. But either way, it is that kind of classic New Deal style. And they tend to focus on big themes. It can be about commerce. It can be about transportation. It can be very specific to the culture of the state that it's in. And there's nothing I love more than finding a library or a post office that has one of these great classic murals. And so what's lovely about it, too, is because they were in the game of just trying to create jobs and finance folks, many of these murals appear in out-of-the-way places that, if you're going on a road trip or you're just heading out into the world, doesn't have to be one of the major city centers. You can come upon one of these extraordinary pieces of art. And, they're in various states of preservation, but there's finally, I feel like, a lot of movement around trying to protect these cultural treasures. So we'll put it in the show notes. Wikipedia page, List of United States Post Office Murals. Some of those secret gems, I like so much.
And I'm seeing Salisbury has two, and I don't think I've ever seen them.
This is what is so extraordinary about this page, Ryan. It's got all these wonderful places that, I'm looking in Connecticut, which is, of course, where I grew up. There's one in West Haven I've never seen. Fording of the West River to settle West Haven? Sounds amazing.
Not a lot to do in West Haven either, so that's something.
There's one in Southington called The Romance of Southington. I mean, this is art I can get behind. I'm not kidding. I'm definitely going to go do these next time I'm down visiting my mom.
Yeah, no, this is fantastic. How
about this one in Madison, Connecticut? It's called Gathering Seaweed from the Sound. These are terrific.
I love it. I love it.
This got me real excited. And I think there's a lot of historical stories here to tell. Very, very cool.
Yeah, well, that's an excellent last stop. Everybody should check that out and go see your local post office mural.
Well, until next time,
I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kieran Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This seat taken. What are you planning for the plane ride back, Ryan?
Eating a lot of cheesy bread.
You can't just pack it all.
Just pack it all in.
We know, but the problem is we know that you check bags. You can't check that cheesy bread.
I'll just have it bundled in my arms.